Okay, let's get started. I just have this block because I have it on hand, and it's an 8x8 watercolor block, so all the sheets are glued together, so then you don't have to tape it down or anything, which is nice. It doesn't crinkle and buckle. Sometimes it can be a pain to release the sheets because they're glued, like I said, to all the papers underneath, but if you find something like with a sharp flat edge or something, it's easy to kind of peel it up and away. So getting started with that, I just have my normal palette here, and then my warm and cool glasses, and my shop rag or a paper towel. I really like to switch up what brushes I use for these kind of like intuitive floral pieces. I really love this Blooms brush by Princeton. It was a collab they did with Jenna Rainey, and if you don't follow Jenna Rainey, I recommend it. She's amazing. She's a very big inspiration in my watercolor journey thus far. But yeah, this is a Blooms brush. It's a size 12 filbert brush, and it's just got kind of like the perfect shape to create petals for all kinds of different flowers. It's just like soft enough, but like big and juicy enough to do all kinds of things. For this page, it might be slightly big. It's really nice on like larger sheets of paper, like this one here. What is this, like a 12 by 12 sheet? So much fun. I mean, you can still use it on whatever paper. I also use my size 10 or 12 round brush, probably more of a 12. I feel like the like juicier petals the better for me personally, but it's kind of a personal preference thing too. I also really love a flat brush. So this is a 1/2 inch flat brush from Princeton. It's their Heritage Series 4050 as well. Love this brush. Creates different kinds of petals, obviously, since it's more squared out and less like rounded, but kind of the similar vibe as painting with like a filbert brush, just a little bit different shape. I do also have this size 8 filbert brush. It's from their Velvet Touch, Princeton Velvet Touch series. I do like this one as well, especially for like smaller pieces like this. So really whatever you can get your hands on, any kind of brush like this. I even love sometimes like a little modeler brush or something. Just kind of play with it, see what you enjoy painting the most with. And I recommend just like sticking with one brush for some of these experiments, like just taking one brush, changing the angles and like carving and creating petals different ways. Yeah, and then you can even use that for the leaves and everything, and it just gives you like a good range of what the brush will do for you. When I first started, I did it mostly with a round brush because I had limited materials and I was traveling with my round brush, and I loved it. So I think we'll start with that. So kind of the theme of what I'm getting like the requests for is just kind of like the intuitive, like fill in a page of florals kind of thing. And for me, the reason why it's taken me so long to get this into a tutorial form for you is just because it's just something for me that's kind of more of a flow state activity and less of like a thought out process. So it's taken a minute to kind of dial my words in around it, and you'll still have to bear with me because I'm still not 100% positive if I'll be able to convey them properly. Okay. So when I do these pages, a lot of times what I like to do is just choose like one color and kind of do different like saturations of that color. So I'll start with like more of a water forward base layer for the flowers and add in different bleeds, and like darker petals is typically kind of the setup that I go for there. Okay. So let's try it. You guys know I love Payne's Gray, so let's just go with a Payne's Gray. I'm gonna wake that bad boy up. I think it's finally time for me to clear out one of these wells. They're getting real dirty, and I want to be able to just have my Payne's Gray kind of base there. So let me wake this up. Especially when you're trying a new technique or exploring something different than like you're used to, I guess. I think it's good to take something else off your plate, you know? So like choosing a whole color palette and trying to put together a cohesive bouquet moment with all these different colors can just feel like too much sometimes when we're just trying to learn something new. So that's why I'm going with the Payne's Gray. But you could do whatever color you want to, like I said. You guys just know I love my paints, so let's dive into it. Okay, so starting with our round brush, just adding some water. It's a little tinted from my color before that I had here, but that's totally fine. Okay, so I'm just adding some water and I'm just gonna grab some paints and get a nice light base. So nothing too dark or crazy. I want it to be much more water forward than anything, because I'm gonna be able to build different levels of our pigments on here. Okay, so just something nice and light. And then the main thing that we want to consider when we're doing these florals is just the petals, how many petals, the shape of the petals, and that they all connect at the center at that like stamen area where they all bloom out from. So all the petals always need to point back to that center stamen area, or it's not going to feel like organic. Okay, it's gonna feel too like not real, I guess. So we always want to point our petals back to the center of our flower, and we want to consider the shape. So oftentimes the shape of the petals, depending on the type. So I do a lot of kind of like, I'd say more made up flowers. They're reminiscent of some real flowers, so you can print out some like photos if you need a little bit more guidance on what that would look like. I usually go for like poppies or anemone kind of flowers, and those are kind of like my base guide point. But you can do different ones, like, and obviously different petals will have, or different flowers will have different shape of petals. So just kind of look and study that a little bit and kind of like deduce it down to the shape of the petals. Okay, for this we're going to keep it simple. We're going to do nothing like crazy, just kind of like this abstract loose flower. In order to do so, I want it to be kind of fluffy, and I kind of just do these like scribble marks. So again, this is very like intuitive. It's something that's going to take some time to build up the practice and the muscle memory and like kind of get a feel for how those different flowers look together. But for these sheets, I just kind of start somewhere, decide where I want a flower and go for it. You can think composition wise and think it out more so, and think of like big open flowers and then filling it in with smaller flowers around the side. For me, when I start with it, I just don't like to overthink. I just want to get it going, and I want to put something on paper, because this is just more of like a flow state exercise, which can build into then like really pretty floral sheets. But for the most part, we're really more concerned with just dropping into that state of flow, creating something, and kind of like finding that inspiration from within ourselves. Okay, so I'm gonna start, and I always start at the center of the flower, and then I just kind of pull this petal shape out, which can be kind of like heart shaped, and kind of make it thicker. But I always kind of thin it out when it goes back to the base of the flower, because I want that base of the flower to always just kind of be that little point that connects to the stamen area. Okay, I don't want it to be too big, or else it's gonna be like, why is that so large here, and how does that even connect? Okay, so just kind of basing that, then I'm going to go next to it. They can touch a bit. I like to touch mine. Sometimes I like to give them a little bit of space. Really just depends. But we're using a lot of our water control techniques in this too, so I'm kind of creating that nice sheen. Okay. And then the bottom petals, I always kind of make a little bit thicker, because it's like they're almost like tilted a little bit different. So you just see a different angle. You don't necessarily see the tip where it connects as much. If that makes sense. So I'm kind of just creating the flower shapes. I'm going back over some of these areas where it might have dried, because I want to get a little bleed in here. Okay, so I'm going to pull straight from my Payne's Gray now, straight from that pigment, and from the center area. I'm just going to give it a little tap here and there, and let some of those darker hues bleed in. You can pull them a little bit closer and create a little bit more of that center of the flower there. Okay. Rinse my brush. We're gonna add another one. Grab my light Payne's color. I'm gonna do one kind of over here. Maybe too much water on my brush. But see, the shape of the petal, they can vary a bit. They're gonna be different because it's nature, right? But I want them to all kind of like resemble something similar, so that alludes to being the same kind of flower. This one I'm gonna do kind of more of those half moon or like C curve shapes at the bottom, just to really emphasize like the switch of the angle of the flower, so it's not all of them kind of looking at you the same way. Okay, so you'll just see those like kind of smaller petals that are just kind of gonna be a different angle. I'm gonna go back over my petal here. Make sure it's wet, but not too wet, right? Just a nice sheen, going back to that water control lesson from last month. Grabbing some of that Payne's gray, and back in the center here, gonna pull down in the center and tap in that darker blue hue, okay? And I do a little bit less on these ones because it's just, like I said, a different angle, so you're not gonna see as much of like the center stamen kind of area. You can also go back in, like when it dries a little bit more, and tap in a darker color if you want to, so you get even more interest. Some of them start to dry, which is fine, but just giving you options. Okay. So then I'm gonna grab some of this light Payne's again, tap off the excess, and maybe I'll add another flower kind of like on its side here. So I'm gonna do the same thing. It always starts with like the same kind of base petal shape, okay? And from there I'm gonna do more of a C curve, pointing back to the center where they all connect. That C curve, and kind of pull out a petal there. Maybe another one on this side. Nothing too crazy. Keeping this one a bit more simple, okay? So it's on the side, you don't really see the center, but we can probably see some. You might not want this, but we're gonna put that there just because I like the depth that it brings. If it's not in the center of the flower, so technically you might not be able to see it, but again, it's our world, it's our flowers. We're doing what we want with these here, okay? Once I get like 3 flowers on here, I like to kind of switch up to my leaves and stems and such. So I kind of get a balance back and forth between adding flowers, adding stems and leaves, adding flowers, adding stems and leaves, so I can just kind of make room for everything as we go. Okay, so I have more of that dark color. I'm gonna tap it in the center here of this flower. And then I'm gonna add in some leaves. So I always think it's easiest to kind of start with these side ones, because this we can give like a little triangle base. A little too much paint on my brush, so I tapped off that excess. Just kind of connecting that with like the little bud there. Okay, I'm gonna pull it down. I wanna give it some sort of movement. So I have these 2 here, and I'm gonna kind of go between here to create some of that movement. I don't want to pull it all the way down to the bottom because I'm not sure I want to commit to that. I can always add more, but I can't take it away so easily, okay? So kind of just going with the movement that I want to create within the piece. Holding my brush at a slight angle, light pressure, just kind of pulling down on that. Maybe I will go a little bit further because then I can connect it to this one. Maybe this one will have a little stem coming that way. These kind of flowers always have kind of scraggly looking leaves, so I don't like to overthink the leaves. I don't want it to have like perfect tip belly tip kind of leaves. They're more like scratched in for me, if that makes sense. Okay, so I kind of like do some small ones up at the top. Just very light pressure on my brush, just kind of like creating some very loose. I'm gonna add a bigger one here. Again, we're just kind of going for stylized, so we don't need it to be like perfect. I'm just kind of creating some scraggly like loop-de-loops here. You can put little guys kind of off to the side. Sometimes I like to go over, so it's not just like on either end of the stem like that one is, kind of see like on both sides of that. Okay. Maybe this one just has like a little offshoot somewhere here. I'm not going to do too much more than that right now because I want to add some more flowers before I kind of commit to filling this all up with a stem. Okay. And in this practice, again, it's more of a flow state exercise, so determining how things are gonna line up, where you want things to go, kind of like playing with composition within your mind and seeing what that looks like to you. Seeing what you think it should look like to you, I guess. So I have those 3 flowers here. I want to do some more, but I want to make some smaller kind of accent flowers too. So like maybe I'll have a little side kind of bud. It's not quite open yet, so I'm not even going to add more petals. Maybe like one to the side there. I'm going to add one more over here, maybe facing the other way. Again, play with it, the directions that you're wanting those to be. And I just like to make these little like kind of small blooms that can fill in places without taking up too much room, but kind of add to the overall impact of the piece, I suppose. Okay, I'm absorbing some of that water because I don't want it to be too wet when I drop that bleed. Otherwise, we know what happens because we watched that watercolor control tutorial from last month. Okay, so one there, one there. I'm kind of already pulling down the stem area from those. Okay, maybe this one I'll touch and connect that there just so I get a little bit of a bleed. I do that one there a little bit. I don't think it's already dry, so won't do much there. But you can try to connect that. We can add another stem here, maybe like a little boop. Maybe fill in some extra green, leafery, greenery situations around there. So from here, this one's probably not going to have much room for much else below here, so I'm going to pull this stem down, giving it a little bit of an angle, a little bit of a curve, and I'll fill this in with a little bit of a scraggly little leaf there, and a little something something connecting there. Okay, so again, we're just kind of filling in as we go, seeing what we think, seeing what it looks like. I want to do something else here and fill up this space a little bit. So let's throw another flower over here, top of my excess. So I'm doing another kind of side facing one, my C curves on the side, kind of connecting down there. Then maybe I'm gonna do a little like tiny bulb there. Okay. Checking my water levels, making sure my bleeds are gonna be to my liking. Adding in my base here. Giving it another interesting kind of movement. Filling in some leaves, some greens, dropping in that bleed, maybe pulling that just into that stem right there that already exists. Maybe adding a little extra floof to the side, okay? So again, just kind of filling in more and more here and there. Kind of want to try to fit another bigger one up here. Maybe it won't be like a full one, but maybe another one of these like kind of half open guys here. Something like that. Okay. my bleeds. Maybe filling in some more flowers. Let's see. Let's do a little one here. And then let's do like a side facing one. Pulling that into the center, connecting with petals on the side. Pulling out some of that water so I can have some water control. Okay. Dropping in. And just kind of pulling out that side moment. Might give this a curve that way. Try to continue that going on there. Maybe I'll pull this one in this way. Throw in some leaves. Touching the petals occasionally where I want to so that it adds a few more bleeds, some interest here and there. Okay, and then we have this last little section here. I'm trying to decide for balance what I think it needs. Up here I feel like we need a little leaf or something. Up here. Balance that out a little bit more. Again, you can do whatever kind of leaves you want if you want to do the belly tip ones that make more sense. This is just kind of my go-to flow leaves lately, and it's just like, again, light pressure, loop-de-loop. Sometimes the pressure leaves a page, my brush leaves a page, and I'm happy with that because it gives me some extra, just kind of like texture, dimension, I don't know. Okay, I'm gonna do one more. Just kind of side one here, just barely opening that one. Okay, get that for our water control. I'm just gonna pull this stem down. You can even add some like little stem suggestions, maybe coming down other places, just to kind of fill it out, see what you think it needs. Okay, so once we kind of fill our page, I just take my dark Payne's gray again, and I'm gonna go kind of dot around the center. Moving my brush so it's kind of a different angle, not just like kind of stamping the same shape over and over again. Just kind of filling in those center stamen areas for those open ones that we can see at least. Not worrying about the other ones that are on the side. Okay. Okay, so at this point we have a really pretty, just kind of like finished floral page. Really fun flow state exercise. There's maybe some practice to be had, like even I think I did these flowers too big and it left a lot less space to kind of balance out the rest of the page. But every time you do one of these, you learn something and take it with you and do something on the next one, right? So we're not judging ourselves for that, we're just moving forward. There's a couple things that I could do from here, like I could go on and outline this, and I'll show you kind of like my intuitive outline process. You could feel free to just leave it here and be like, I love it, it's beautiful, I don't want to mess with it, which I do feel is often something I like to do, and I get scared of going on and making more mistakes, but it's always a learning experience no matter what. So we're gonna go ahead and do it. I'm gonna grab a size 6 round brush for this just because I just want to. I don't want it to be too heavy. I don't want to have to worry about my heavy-handedness with my bigger brush, but you could absolutely still use this, just lighter pressure, and make sure you have a really nice fine tip. But I'm gonna switch to my size 6, and I'm pulling straight from my Payne's Gray, but I'm kind of diluting it in our lighter mixture here. Okay. And for this, I like to, again, tap off the excess, make sure I have a nice fine tip, but I kind of just follow the shape of the petals and kind of let them tell me what they need. So we're just doing, again, very loose. Not every portion of this needs to be outlined. Not everything needs to be perfect. It's not going to be perfect. It's going to be flowy and free and fun, okay? So I'm just going to trace the petal shapes, watching to make sure I don't stamp my hand around in all of this, okay? But light pressure, kind of just following that petal shape up at the top. I get kind of these like, that was kind of a weird one. It'll happen sometimes, okay? Don't beat yourself up over it, but just kind of like following the shapes of the petals, creating some texture in there. I go from the base on the inside and kind of like pull outwards to kind of create some texture from each shape, from each petal, so following the shape of each petal. And then from the top you can kind of add some little textures in there too, depending on the shapes that you already have existing, and you can even like throw some little boops in there, here and there, to give it a little extra something. Optional. Okay, but for these ones that are more, this one's still kind of wet, but that's okay. Kind of just following the shape of the flower again, kind of like following where they have little lines at the top to kind of emphasize the shapes that already exist. So let's go to like this one. We'll go to our big petal. I'm just following the shape. These ones that have like little ridges like that, sometimes I like to kind of double over on that, and then it looks like it's kind of folded nicely, which makes, if that makes sense. Okay, but I still want to add some little lines to kind of create some texture on each leaf. And again, I'm doing it very free-flowing and loose, not thinking too much about it. It's, again, an exercise in intuition and kind of dropping into that flow state, just kind of trusting what you see and following what you see instead of trying to control and manipulate everything. Just kind of seeing what's already there and working with what we've got, okay? Maybe I'll give this one a little curve like that top one there. Make it feel like it's a little more tilted that way. More than anything, we want this to be just kind of an exercise in, like I said, our intuition. Letting go, trusting that we can kind of find the beauty in what's already there, rather than try to kind of force it to our whim. These ones that are kind of tilted more this way, I like to do that kind of C-curve or like moon shape at the base there, and kind of just pull those. I'll show you that again. So like kind of like follow that petal shape, but like make a little more of a moon, and just kind of pull those in towards the center, and then it gives you the illusion that those petals are facing at a different angle. For those, we can give them some lines kind of within both of those broken down portions of our petal shapes. Okay. So just trusting that you can find it, that you'll see what is in front of you and try to make the best of it. Okay. Sometimes it'll work out better than you expect. Sometimes you'll be like, why did I do that? And both ways are good experiences. Some you you just learn a little bit more. And some you just get to pat yourself on the back. Okay. So just don't be afraid to try. Just try it, see what you think. Give it a go. You just can't be afraid of it. The only waste of paper is blank paper. Okay? So just don't be afraid of trying and failing, because that's how we learn, that's how we experiment. The first time I did this, it did not turn out the way it does when I do it for the 100th or 1000th time now, right? So it's different. You just have to trust that you can get there. Again, these are kind of those more moon-shaped ones. They're kind of jutted out at that different angle. Just have to trust. And if you are in doubt and you're like, I don't even know if I can, like, either get a reference photo or go take a walk, and especially now that it's nice outside, go look at flowers. Like, just go look at something. Go get inspired from nature. Try to paint intuitively things that you see and that you like. I am thinking next month we might do more, like, kind of an expansion on the intuitive series. Maybe like intuitive landscapes, and painting what you see, just so we can start trusting ourselves more to do things like this, like bring something to life without feeling, I mean, like prepared, or like having to be walked through step by step exactly how to create something. Just knowing that we are able to create anything we want to. Maybe it doesn't turn out exactly as we imagined the first time, but we're on the right path and we can learn from that. Okay. And these dark areas where I have the leaves, those are really dark already, but I like to go over some of them and give them like a little bit of a shadow, or like a little extra texture. So I'm just taking a dark version of that Payne's gray and following the shapes of those two, kind of giving some extra shadowy dimension to some of those shapes, just kind of following along. Maybe I'll pull out like a little bit of a stem from them. Okay. Just hinting at the illusion of the shape, which is not perfect. It's just kind of some scraggly little squiggle. And then like maybe add a little texture to the base of the ones on the side, so you can see like some shadows there too. Sometimes I like to go in and add some little dots around the center stamen area, especially if it's like an anemone or something. They have those kind of really cool stamens that have all those little floating dots. You can add lines and stuff too, but again, I'm just kind of alluding to these here. I don't want to like get too crazy serious about what they all should look like. Okay. Just going in and adding another layer for some added dimension. It's nothing too serious. Very lighthearted, very whimsical. Okay. Just following the existing shapes. Following the path that's already been laid out. Just expanding on it a little bit more. Okay. Cool. And then there we have it. A nice little intuitive floral sheet. And I hope that really helps you kind of just like connect to yourself, trust with yourself, and just kind of dive in to the world of intuitive watercolor florals. Like I said, I recommend doing this with just kind of maybe one color. You could go in and like some of these lighter areas, like maybe I'll grab some of this Dr. P.H. Martin's bleed proof white and add it to my Payne's gray and make a nice opaque gouache. I can go in with a lighter color and kind of dot around too. Create a little extra highlight at that center there. Looks a little dark. But that's optional too, right? You don't have to. It's just something you can do. But I like it. You can even go around and add a highlight to wherever if you feel like it's too dark. But there we go. Just a fun little floral flow state exercise practice that can really get you in touch with your creation and your watercolor floral style.